Welcome back to another programming video. Today's topic, we're looking at modules. And this is going to be the last video for this section on functions and reusability. Without wasting further time, let's jump straight into it. Now, I'm using VS Code to run my code on my local machine. Feel free to use any environment of your choice for as long as you're able to follow along in practice and learn something from it. Now, what is a module? A module is a simple file that contains Python code, like the one that you're looking at the moment. You've noticed every time I'm trying to run my code, I always reference the file main.py. So this is a module in itself, and it contains a code that include function, classes, variables, even runnable code. So whatever it is that you put in this file will be considered as code for as long as Python can run it. And a module can be built in or it can be user defined. Built in meaning there are existing stuff, for lack of a better word, that Python comes with prepackaged, and it's just a matter of using those keywords, knowing them first, and then using those keywords and pass in some parameters, and Python return the appropriate response. And the second part, second type, and it's basically your user defined, which is what I want to really focus on, because this section or this chapter has mainly been about functions and reusability, meaning you create stuff that sometimes include built-in functions, and but the whole function itself is something you made yourself. And like you see now when I show you my reusable code or my module that I create on the side, that the whole idea will come to life. And how you go about importing, when I say import, is an assumption here is that you've created a separate file that contains your code, and then you want to use that in a different file or different module. So in that case, you need to use a keyword import, and that's simple. You just don't have to think about something unique about Python or syntax that's hidden somewhere. Import, it means import. You're just going to bring it from somewhere else. So let me show you what I have in terms of module. So this is my module, and it's located the same location, basically next to the main.py. So and that's how I'm able to import it, like you'll see in the next section. Now, I've created a couple of utils or tools. One function does the addition, as you can see, pass in, receive two parameters, and then return the sum of those parameters. And then I have the area of a rectangle, receive two parameters, length and width, and then return the multiplication, multiply those two and return the result of that of that calculation. And then I have the area of a circle, and this is where it becomes slightly interesting in the sense that I'm importing a built-in function or module, and that's math. So and that's where it becomes our knowledge kind of grow a little bit, so that we don't just have to have our function doing just this kind of thing, but we can actually go ahead and combine our function, user-defined function, and include an import within, because maybe it's just for this particular example and we don't want it for the other function. So here it's possible to do an import within a function. So that's something cool to keep in mind in case you ever want to use a built-in function for your calculation, for process, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And you can see to access the other possible variables or module or function defined on the math, I just use a .py and do the rest and return the calculation. And then I have a Celsius to Fahrenheit, and I try to add a couple of things there. Basically, all you see here is a string, and my approach is just to put those inverted comma and then add a letter F to symbolize Fahrenheit, and it just makes things a little bit nice to look at, so that the value that's been returned has some sort of meaning. And then I have a kilometer to miles, doing the same thing here, using my F string there, and then passing in the value and then adding miles at the end, so that we can have a meaningful result. So that's all about my module, and how I go about importing that. So first of all, this is the structure, just to give a picture, and next to each to the main.py, and we have the utils.py. So you'll notice that the file always ends with a .py, and that's how Python would like it to be, and then be able to run it using Python. Now, to do the import, like I said, I'm going to show you two ways. And the first way, which for a beginning, I think it's ideal. And the reason for that, I will explain just now. As you can see, I'm using import.utils, and that's a module, obviously. Python sees that. And that module, as it stands, has contained all those functions that I showed you earlier on. And the way you go about importing it is basically you utils, and you put a dot, and then you can see all your functions available to use. And functions, you can see fx, 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 fx available there. That's basically short for functions, and in my view, if I'm correct. And yeah, it just looks like functions. So I'm assuming it's functions. It must be functions. So these are all your functions available within that module. And it's just a matter now of selecting the one that you want to use. For example, we're going to use an add. And if you open close bracket, it tells you what parameters need to be passed in. So if I pass parameter 1, comma, parameter 2, and basically run this code, and I'll get 4 because I'm adding the two values. Now, before I carry on, let me show you the other way you can go about doing this, which is probably a simpler way. It also has its place depending on what your scenario is. The difference here is that we're using a word from. So basically here we're using import, we bring in the whole thing. No selection, no, just bring the whole file. But in cases where, for example, the module is huge and you maybe have thousands of functions within that module, and it just doesn't make sense to have thousands of stuff loaded, and you probably just want to load one or maybe two, and then this might become a good use case to go about using. And what you can do is just type the word from and then type in the module name, which is the name of the file that you created that contains all your functions, and then import is still there, and then you can import a specific function. I think what else we did, we say the rectangle, yeah, rectangle area. That's basically it. And then what you can do next, you can say a rectangle area and open close bracket, and you can see the names of the parameters, and you're passing the length, a comma, and you pass the width, and that's basically it. So now we're gonna do what we've done with the other one. That's gonna be a print, and if we run that code, what do we get? We get a 200 because it does the calculation and returns the result. So that's another way to go about importing this. But for the sake of these video, I'm gonna stick to this one because I just like it when, you know, if I'm looking for something, I don't have to scratch my head and try and think, well, what did I create again? And then I just put a dot and I can see what's available and just click on what I want. You see, it's just simpler that way. And if I have 1,000 of these, I can just scroll all the way down to see all of them and maybe select the one that I want, and then just boom, that's it. I got it. Now I'm gonna look at the Celsius to Fahrenheit, same approach, and we do run the code, and you can see it's returning the value. And then we have the other one for kilometers to miles, and we pass in one value. If you hover it, it tells you need to pass the kilometers, and it returns a string. And if I run the code one more time, you can see I'm getting the miles. And then the last one is circle area. For hover it, and you pass in a radius, a number, and it returns just anything. So and then to clear that, and then we run code once again, and you can see we have our the area of our circle value being returned. So I hope you've learned something new in this video, and this marked the end of the section, the topic of chapter rather, on functions and reusability. Until next time, keep well. Bye-bye.